Sometimes I make a sketch and I'm like, I hope this actually looks good in real life. So let's find out. Hi, I'm Jess from JessCrafts.com and I'm here to help you make the most of your crafty supplies and time. So let's get making. Today I have a sketch where you take a 6x6 pattern paper and you make a 6x6 square card. And there's no pattern paper scraps left, but you will use cardstock and there will be some cardstock scraps. So I came up with this design where you're gonna put 3 stripes in the back and then you're gonna put these triangles over it. You could reverse it. You could do the triangles in the background and the stripes on top. So experiment with it, but I thought this had kind of a cool like window look to it. I'm working with some Violet Studio products, and these were sent to me from scrapbook.com, so thank you to scrapbook.com. And I have the Home for Christmas line. I'm working with the 6x6 pattern paper, the Merry Christmas die, which was, I got it as part of the die cutting and embossing kit, which is pretty cool because it has a lot of, it has, you know, a couple dies, couple embossing folders, some cards and a bunch of stuff. So you can buy them individually or in kits, which I like to have options. The kits are beautifully packaged though. So if you're looking for like a special gift to give a crafter, I would recommend them because they just are, you know, just packaged really nicely without having to put a lot of effort into it. I want something, this Merry Christmas die I'm gonna cut out of solid cardstock. Basically, I need something that isn't directional. Because if it is directional, like if there's a clear top and bottom, like when I move these and take these chucks and I turn them on their side, they're gonna look like they're pointing in an odd way. So I need a really kind of basic pattern paper. This green one, I like this idea of the green one a lot, actually. And I haven't used this one yet, even though I keep kind of pulling it out and thinking I want to use it. So maybe I did use it, I don't remember, but I like it. Okay, so according to the sketch, the very first thing I want to do is cut my 6x6 piece of paper to 3x6. Then I will cut it to 3x3. And that makes these 2 squares at the top, which I then have to cut on the diagonal. And it can be a little bit tricky to follow like where the sketch is telling you to cut the diagonals. If you have a non-directional pattern paper, i.e. it looks good in every direction no matter how you turn it, you don't really have to worry about it too much, but you do need one for each corner. So that's something you want to be kind of keeping in mind as you're cutting. And cut this next one, just putting the 2 diagonal corners, and then that's going to be kind of like the basis of my card. Normally I would mix patterns, but I'm gonna just try to do this with all one piece of pattern, single-sided pattern paper. I love double-sided pattern paper because you can have 2 patterns from one set of cuts, but I think this design will look cool if it's all the same pattern. It's one of those ones where you don't need to do that because to me the design in and of itself is pretty interesting. So anyway, I cut that 3x6 piece into 3 1x6 inch pieces. I'm gonna need mats for these, so I'm gonna cut them 1/4 inch wider, but the same length because this is gonna stretch all the way across my 6-inch card, so I don't need any additional on the edges. And I'm gonna cut those out of craft cardstock. I love when a paper line goes well with craft because it means that I don't have to think about what I'm going to pick as the matte color. I don't need to have a bunch of color choices. So I've just been using craft for this series. This design benefits from me being a little bit more precise because of all the interesting angles that are going on. So I have it lined up on my craft mat such that I can kind of see or that I can see where the center points are. And that's what's helpful about having a craft mat, like a grid mat to work on. It doesn't, this happens to be the Altenew grid mat, but it literally does not matter which grid mat. There's one that you feel comfortable working with. So I want this one in the center, and then I need the other 2 to be, my main focus is for it to be equidistant from the ones in the center. So this doesn't end on an exact line on my mat, but I could pull it down such that both sides are lined up on a same grid line across, and then just decide, okay, I'm gonna do 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch. I think I'm gonna do 1/4 inch because I want a lot of this pattern showing. And Then I'll do the same here. I made sure this is lined up, and I'm just gonna go 1/4 inch bigger. Now, as usually happens, not everything measured to 6 inches is exactly 6 inches. These are just like the tiniest bit longer. That's okay. When I do need to trim off things like this that are lined up on a card, I like to open the card and trim from the back, or just any, like if it's attached to a panel, I like to turn the panel over. I don't like to cut from the front. I find that a lot harder to line up. Then I'm going to add my pattern paper. I chose a pattern paper that is pretty solid. I did not, as much as I thought the presents were cute, and I don't know if I've used these presents yet. There's a lot of white space in the back, like literal, it's white background. And so, one, I'm not a big fan of white with cream, so I want to avoid that. But also, I don't think it will stand out when I make those triangle pieces. I think a mostly solid pattern is great. If I were to glue this directly down, this pattern paper is going to bump over the background. So I'm actually probably going to take some scraps of cardstock and use it to prop up these pieces. I'm going to mainly need it here at the tops and the bottoms, and I'm just going to use some scrap craft cardstock that I have left over from cutting mats for these various projects. I'll briefly show you how I was propping them up with scraps here. So craft is one of the few colors that I keep a little like scrap bin of, and they're usually tiny scraps because I find they're pretty perfect for things like sentiments. But they also work out well in cases like this when I need smaller scraps. A lot of my cardstock colors, I keep the scraps in with the cardstock, like all my full sheets of the cardstock. And if you're curious about how I organize cardstock, because I always love to see the various ideas people come up with, I have a video for that on my channel, and I'll try to link it, or, you know, put a little, I don't know, there's like a little card or something that goes up on the top. I'm not very good with that kind of stuff, guys. Okay, so then I'm gonna just line them up carefully. You can fix any like little minor lining up mistakes by trimming some things off, but I don't know, I'm not worried about it being too perfect. Okay, so once I have cut out this die, you could do a number of things. You could take all those little pieces and fit them back in, and you would do it like 2 different colors, and then you would put the pieces in. So like I could cut it out of this burgundy color, and then I could cut it again out of green or something like that, or I could cut it out of a bunch of colors. I could cut it out of white and individually color all these little pieces. And I think everyone who's watched previous videos of mine knows I'm not gonna do that. I think it would look really cool and pretty, but it's not really my personal style. It's not what I like. That kind of fussiness is not really for me, but I like that you can use it both ways, and you don't have to be a fussy person to really enjoy this die, but you can be. Then I also think you can leave it with a border, which is what I want to do, because I want to mimic the fact that I have some craft borders already going on my card. So I'm going to leave a border around this. Now, here's the other thing. I am challenged with die cutting, as I just spoke of, that here I've added back in the little like spaces between the words. Even that is sometimes a struggle for me, because I just tend to like lose the pieces and not be very careful, but I am going to try to find them, and I'm going to use that. I'm going to use this red one because I think it really pops off the more like simple green card, because everything is so pattern. This red really pops off. But you can leave the border, or you can just cut around it. I would glue the whole thing down and then cut around it, just because if you look, the die cut pieces are so close to the edge. Trying to cut something slightly smaller, I think, would actually be a little bit more frustrating than this method of just cutting around it. But really, either way, and then that way all those spaces are filled. But so I've talked about all the kind of die cutting ways you could do this. The other thing I think you could do is just go in with markers or some kind of color. I think colored pencils actually would be pretty neat, because I think markers would be tricky because you'll accidentally get marker where you don't want it to. But I think because you can sharpen colored pencils quite a bit, you would be able to kind of just color in the words in different colors if that's what you would like to do. Also, quick note, because I mentioned this in a previous video, I now know what this is for. It picks up little pieces like this in sequins. And so that did make it a lot easier to glue these pieces down. It didn't work super well for gems, but sequins and small pieces of paper. I decided I would embellish with some scrapbook.com pops of color. These are the glitter ones. The glitter ones are pretty forgiving, so if you get it in a spot and you want to move it out of the way, you can take like, I don't know, like a craft pick or something and push the glitter and the glue back in. And if you kind of get it outside lines, it's a little bit easier to wipe up because it's mostly clear. And you can again remove the individual pieces of glitter. So I liked that since this is a little bit more of a precise thing and you kind of only want to get it in certain spots. I have a little example here of what it looks like, the other version of it when it's done. And yeah. If you found this video helpful, here's another video where you can find more ideas for enjoying your crafty time and supplies. Let me know you like this video with a share to your crafty community. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next template or tutorial, and check the video description for product links. See you in the next video. Quick thought though, if they have a little too much dimension, give them a little tap tap, and that flattens the dots.